Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. In the recently released WikiLeaks of Clinton emails, Hillary Clinton wrote to John Podesta, who was then counsel to President Obama and now Clinton's campaign manager. She wrote, "We need to use our diplomatic and more traditional intelligence assets to bring pressure on the governments of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which are providing clandestine financial and logistical support to ISIL and other radical Sunni groups in the region." Joining us now to discuss the significance of Clinton's statements for U.S. foreign policy is Zenab Ahmed. He's joining us from London to take a closer look at all of this. Zenab is an associate editor of Susan.com and also a PhD student at SOAS at the University of London. Thanks for joining us, Zenab.
No problem.
So, Zenab, more than 2 years ago, during a speech at Harvard, Vice President Joe Biden also said that U.S. allies funding extremist fighters in Syria and in the region. Let's have a look at this.
What my constant cry was that our biggest problem is our allies. Our allies in the region were our largest problem in Syria. The Turks were great friends, and I have a great relationship with Erdogan, which I've just spent a lot of time with. The Saudis, the Emiratis, etc. What were they doing? They were so determined to take down Assad and essentially have a proxy Sunni-Shia war. What did they do? They poured hundreds of millions of dollars and tens, thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadis coming from other parts of the world. Now you think I'm exaggerating? Take a look. Where did all of this go?
So, Zenab, as you can see, this is not the first time that a U.S. official of this stature has made this connection between funding of ISIS or ISIL and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So Biden and Clinton has now come to this conclusion. What does this mean? What is the significance of it?
Well, it indicates that the Clinton campaign, as well as Hillary Clinton herself, are willfully admitting that there's a problem here in the relationship between the United States and its allies in the Persian Gulf, including Saudi Arabia, including the other smaller monarchies that are there. And it also indicates that a Clinton government would attempt to explore more stable options going forward. It's not likely to abandon its relationship with Saudi Arabia. However, it is willingly acknowledging that there are issues to be resolved within that relationship. And Hillary Clinton is probably not particularly thrilled that these emails leaked. However, they do seem to indicate that she will be taking a heavier hand when it comes to shaping that relationship going forward. And when it comes to repairing the ties that she sees have been broken by President Obama's rapprochement with Iran.
Now, we know for a fact that this is not the first time that the Saudi Arabian monarchy has been given this kind of leeway by the U.S. government. The Bush administration actually had a very intimate relationship, which also led to 9/11 attacks when we discovered that Saudis had a role to play in the 9/11 attacks. And, recently redacted pages that was released to the public all clarify the role that the Saudis did play in 9/11. How come the Saudis get so much leeway with the U.S.?
I think part of that is pretty obvious. You have a superpower that really needs local allies in the region that are willing to project its interests, and requires allies that are willing to secure the flow of oil and are willing to go along with American interests when it comes to geopolitical stability in and around oil-producing countries. And Saudi Arabia has been able to take advantage of that in order for its monarchy to pursue its own interests, and in order for conservative factions of its society to pursue their interests.
Now, Bilal, Qatar and Saudi Arabia are not only involved in this conflict, but they're also involved in Iraq and Syria. What role do these countries and Saudi Arabia in particular play in driving counter-revolutionary forces throughout the Middle East, particularly after the Arab revolts and Arab Spring?
Well, and this is really what the email is about. The Gulf monarchies, including Saudi Arabia, have a stake in empowering extremely far-right Islamist forces from gaining power. And the reason why is because it subverts established liberal Democrat forces, as well as more radically democratic forces from gaining power in these countries, and potentially forming a systemic alternative to the monarchies and their forms of government. And that includes their mild toleration of Islamism that never quite goes too far, and as well as their embrace of neoliberal capitalism. And the real danger of the Arab Spring is that numerous countries in the region could stumble into alternative forms of government, whether in Egypt or in Yemen or in Syria. And as a result, there have been aggressive moves to shape events on the ground in order to thwart that from happening, and with a variety of dangers that present themselves to monarchies like that of Saudi Arabia. It's worth concluding with a note that this has actually happened before. During the initial period of decolonization in the 50s and 60s especially, you had a collection of military coups and nationalist uprisings throughout the Arab world that brought leaders like Abdel Nasser or Gaddafi in Libya to power. And these were extremely threatening to monarchy in Saudi Arabia. And then, as in now, they attempted to consolidate their interests and push back against the wave in order to back either conservative elements in those countries or back conservative moves against those governments. And as a result, the monarchies survived. And the monarchies are behaving in quite a similar manner in reaction to the Arab Spring, although the Arab Spring was such an all-encompassing social event that it remains to be seen whether or not it will be successful. And also, it has involved several civil wars that have been quite costly and have committed monarchies, especially Saudi Arabia, to incredible amounts of international reputation loss, as well as, in the case of Yemen, military loss and loss on human terms as well.
And where does this leave Qatar and Saudi Arabia in terms of the GCC, the Gulf Countries Alliance?
Well, the GCC is more or less still stable. However, the GCC has been racked by a bit of instability just as a result of the fact that many of these conflicts were promised to end in relatively little time, especially the conflict in Yemen, Syria as well, and Gulf involvement in these countries shouldn't have been as extensive as it has ended up becoming, and it also shouldn't have been as direct. So Saudi Arabia needs to, one, end its GCC involvement in these conflicts at some point in the near future, and two, repair ties between it and some of its junior partners, because there is tension there as a result of how long these wars have been going on and how many spillover effects there have been, especially when it comes to the direct losses to GCC military forces, as in the case of Yemen, but also the loss of GCC funds and the damage to the GCC's international reputation, as has happened in Syria.
All right. Zenab, I thank you so much for joining us, and hope to have you back very soon.
Okay.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.